Hello, welcome back again, Aidan. Barry, take it away as we welcome into round 12 results and preview and restrictions for round 13. We also going to be adding a very special addition to this episode with your host, Brian Aidan Barry, doing this episode, mid-season ladder reviews for the AFL and who think will be on top, especially in that top 4 and the bottom of the 8 into the bottom of the 8 as well. Alright, Aidan, take it away. Can't wait to share all your reviews and thoughts. Alright, take it away.
Hello Ben, thank you as always for having me on the program. So this week I'm going to do something a little bit different to what I normally do on the footy show. So this week I'm going to obviously go over the games from round 12, but instead of looking at round 13, I'm going to take some time out and I am going to be reviewing my pre-season ladder at the mid-season point of season 2025. But without further ado, we'll get straight into the first game, which is on Thursday night between Brisbane and Essendon. So that first game was at the Gabba on the Thursday night in Brisbane, and it was a very close game in the end. I think Essendon outperformed even their own expectations, only finishing 3 goals short after the couple of hard weeks they've had, and they are losing bodies down there at the hangar. So, this was a performance that not a lot of people saw coming, but one performance that I think highlights just how well off the Bombers are in terms of their talent depth, with the young kids coming through and obviously having senior players with the like of Todd Goldstein there as well. Yeah, as I said, it was the Bombers who lost this one to the Lions, Brisbane winning this one 13-12-90 to Essendon's 11-6-72, your final score in this one, in what was a very hard-fought, entertaining game and a well-deserved win for Brisbane and a close loss for the Bombers. Final quarter, that Bombers clawed it right back to even before Brisbane just had one more last burst to seal the game in the last half of that quarter. Player of the game for that one is Hugh McCluggage of Brisbane, 152 AFL fantasy, 41 touches, 21 handballs, 11 marks and 4 tackles for another triple-double here on the BJ Footy Show. Now we jump into the game on Friday, which was between Collingwood and Hawthorn from the MCG. Collingwood played a very high quality, very high paced game against Hawthorn, allowing Jamie Elliott to shine again, kicking 5 goals for the Pies in what was a rout of a winning by just over 8 goals and a 50-point win for the Pies. Hawthorn, we'll talk about this more when we get to looking at my pre-season ladder, but I did see this coming. I didn't think Hawthorn would be as good as they were last year in terms of their performance in their ladder position at the midway stage of this year. Obviously, the second half of the year they can pick it up in though. Final score in this one from the MCG, Collingwood versus Hawthorn. Collingwood 16-11-107, Hawthorn 8-8-56. My player of the game for this one, and I think there is no other option but to go with Jamie Elliott, who only had 86 AFL fantasy, but he did have 5 goals, only 12 touches, 9 kicks, 3 handballs, 5 marks, 2 tackles, but that 5 goal there, setting him well and above standard for the game and helping Collingwood get the win in the end in that one. Now we jump into Saturday. 3 games on the Saturday this week due to the bye round starting to occur. Early game on Saturday of round 12 was Gold Coast versus Fremantle from the Gold Coast. And this is a game where I think Gold Coast definitely should have done a lot better, should have definitely won this game. Fremantle coming from West Australia, Perth to Gold Coast is one of the longer trips, one of the harder trips in the AFL. And as we'll see, the Gold Coast let it slip. So the final score in this one, before I get into too much, was Gold Coast 9-10-64, Fremantle 11-9-75, as the Dockers take a win on the Gold Coast. And it was all because of Fremantle having a really strong start. They were able to capitalise and hold Gold Coast when they needed to. So first quarter for Fremantle was a 5-goal quarter there. So even though they did let up in the second a little bit, only kicking 1 goal and bring Gold Coast to win a goal by half time, Fremantle obviously showed that they had Gold Coast number on the day, and they were able to utilise that advantage throughout the rest of the game. Winning the third quarter 3-2, and then final quarter split 2 goals each as Fremantle hang on in the end for a close 11-point win. This is, as I said, one that I think Gold Coast fans, Gold Coast supporters, Gold Coast players know this is one that got away from some. And my player of the game for this one is going to be Shea Bolton from Fremantle. 3 goal, 102 AFL fantasy, 20 touches, 13 kicks, 7 handballs, 4 marks, and 6 tackles in a match-winning performance for the Fremantle recruit. We'll go straight into our second game on Saturday, and this could have been one of the big upsets of the year. It was between GWS and Richmond. GWS losing a key player very early on in the piece, but still able to hold off Richmond at the end, even after the Tigers had a really hot start to this game, as we will see as we go toward the final result of this one. So this one, Richmond, as I said, started really hot, really good start from the Tigers. 6 goals in the first quarter, 1 goal in the second, 3 in the third, and then 1 point for the Tigers in the last. So that early burst just not sustainable in the end for the Tigers, as Gold Coast run them down in that second half. Final score, not Gold Coast, sorry, GWS run them down in that second half. Final score, GWS 12-8-80. Richmond's going to be ruining this one. Negative score differential 10-17-77. Negative score differential, something that will kill you on any given day of the week. So for Richmond, bit of goal kicking practice needed during the week for them. GWS getting out of trouble and escaping the jam with a major win for them. Player of the game in this one, Lockie Ash from GWS, 112 AFL fantasy, 36 touches, 25 kicks, 11 handballs, 6 mark, no tackle for the GWS player. Lockie Ash there is my player of the game. And now we go to the final game on the Saturday, and is between Sydney and Adelaide from the SCG. And this is a chance Sydney had to reset their season and right the wrong of the early mid of the year. However, they weren't able to do that, and from a perspective of a neutral football commentator, I think it's pretty much season over for the Sydney Swans after this one. Adelaide moving on and cruising into strong contention for a top 4 spot if they can keep the back end of the season and that second half very solid like they have in the first. So final scores in this one: Sydney 5-11-41, Adelaide 21-5, 131. So, on the 16 scoring shots that Sydney had, they had a negative differential of essentially 1 to 2, whereas, and that's going to kill any football team in the end. Not enough scores resulting in pointers for the Swannies. On the flip side though, Adelaide had a goal point scoreboard differential of a 4-1 scoreboard differential, and that is absolutely amazing context of modern day AFL, being able to score 20 plus goals for 5 points even away. It's going to set you up well for contending for a premiership come September. We'll go straight to my player of the game in this one, and it is going to be a very hard call, but I'm going to go with, I have to look through, I've got a lot of players that I'm looking at here in this one. Crows had a lot of disposals going around all day. I'm going to go with Alex Neil-Bullen, who had 99 AFL fantasy, 1 goal, 25 touches, 14 kicks, 11 handball, 6 marks, and 4 tackles for the Adelaide recruit from Melbourne over the last off-season. But as I said, Crows, a very team-orientated game on Saturday night, so no one actually got over 25 touches for them, no one got over 100 AFL fantasy for them, and that just shows the list design of the Crows is about keeping the list flat at the top level and having role players contribute when needed. Now we'll jump into the 2 games on Sunday. So the first of these was from Alice Springs at Traeger Park between Melbourne and St Kilda, and this is one that I thought Melbourne should have been a lot stronger in and done a lot better in. They're on the losing end of this one to St Kilda. Final scores here: Melbourne 7-21-63, St Kilda 14-7-91. So Melbourne, again, negative score differential 7-21, and in that last quarter, they did not kick a single goal in that last quarter, kicking 8 points in a game where they probably should have done a lot better. So poor quarter for Melbourne, setting that negative differential from a 1-2 to a 1-3 for them. But for St Kilda, positive score differential 14-7, so 2-1 differential for St Kilda, and that'll win you most games of footy in the AFL. And St Kilda, we have these moments with them where we think season over and it's early doors for them, and then they put in a performance just like this where they come back out and perform at a ground where they're unfamiliar with at Alice Springs against a team who are familiar with them, or a team who we think are, back on the bounce, and like essentially Melbourne having that great run of games recently and then losing at a location that they rarely ever lose at in Alice Springs. So Melbourne may be looking at maybe their season could just as well be on the brink of ending early along with St Kilda. I don't think St Kilda in the end, though, great result for them in this game, but I don't think St Kilda in the end going to be a team contending for that top 8 position. It's definitely probably going to just be missing out. I could see these two actually being my first two out come end of the season. I had to give a player of the game here, and I will give my player of the game to Cal Wilkie of St Kilda, 128 AFL fantasy, 31 touches, 22 kicks, 9 handball, 15 marks and 2 tackles. So St Kilda's kick-to-kick game working really well. Wilkie getting very much involved in that with 15 marks. Another shout out to another St Kilda player in Brad Hill with 13 marks on the day for him as well. So great performance by St Kilda here, and unfortunately for Melbourne, it is another week and it is another loss for the Demons as we move now into our final game on the Sunday between West Coast and Geelong. This was a late start across the country, starting at 6:50pm South Australian time. And we had one game played and one game with one result. West Coast try as much as they like. Not ever able to. You put real sustained pressure on the Cats. We see little bumps here as they go up and down on the scoreboard. But for West Coast, this is they lose by 43. But that last quarter is where it gets away from them at the end, with Geelong just running out the goal. But from sort of the back end of that first quarter all the way through to the beginning of the fourth quarter, West Coast were right there with Cats. So that is a big positive to take away for West Coast. For Geelong, again, business as business does for the Cat, winning quite comfortably in the end here. The final score was West Coast 11-7-73, Geelong 17-14, 116. My player of the game in this one is Bailey Smith of the Cats. 147 AFL fantasy, 1 goal, 38 touch, 27 kicks, 11 handballs, 7 marks, and 4 tackles for Bailey Smith. Now I am going to move on to looking at my predictions for the preseason ladder and measuring it against how teams are going in the real world in season 2025 at the mid-season point. So we start in 18th. Now, on my ladder, I had Richmond down here. Richmond, surprisingly, have won a couple of games more than their contenders down here. They have played, some exceptional footy. I've been really enjoying what they do. Nearly stole another one on the weekend against GWS, but their young crop is really showing what they can do. Real world is West Coast in 18th with that one win over St Kilda a couple of weeks ago, and on my ladder I had West Coast in 16th. 17th on my ladder I had Gold Coast. I didn't think that they'd make their home a fortress like they did last year. It has been a little bit more shaky this year, however they've been managing to pick up wins away, so big ups for the Gold Coast. Sees them in 4th in the 2025 AFL ladder, whereas I had them in 17th and in 16th. On my ladder, I had West Coast. They are in 18th with only that one win against St Kilda, and West Coast are looking rather miserable compared to the rest of the pack, and I just haven't seen a lot of development from their young players, especially Harley Reid, Ruben Gimby, the types who can be match winners if they were in a position or in a club where they could do that for them. Going up my ladder, in 15th is North Melbourne. I thought North would be a little bit stronger than they were last year after their recruits and their draft picks, but they are still down in 17th. Only 2 premiership points of Richmond, well clear of West Coast with a game and a half ahead of them, which is when you're down the bottom, you are going to be, a one game is quite a long way for teams down there. Now we'll get into some interesting predictions. So on my ladder in 14th, I had Melbourne. Melbourne in the real world are in 12th. So they're not too far off where I thought they would be. This is an interesting one because I've always said Melbourne are slowly going further and further away from a flag, but this year they've had a really good run of games where they've racked off win after win after win, and they've got themselves sitting just outside the 8 at the moment by 2 games outside the 8, not including teams on byes as well. So, Melbourne doing really well in the real world. My ladder, I thought they'd probably be around the same point, just dependent on percentage. On my preseason predictions, we move up to 13th, and I had Essendon there. Well, they have shocked me a lot. They are in 10th on the AFL ladder. So the Bombers have done really well with what they've got, dealing with the injury crisis, and they are a team just sitting outside the 8. I don't think they're going to hold on for much longer with the injury crisis deepening at Essendon, but it is still an opportunity for them to get some good position on the ladder in the second half of the year. I think they just miss out on the 8 and probably slide back a little bit. In 12th on my preseason ladder was GWS. GWS in the real world are sitting in the top 8 in 7th position at the moment, and with the injuries, just like Essendon, with the injuries mounting up, I think they're going to slide back a little bit. I think that 7th at the moment is where they a fair play for them to sit, but I don't know how competitive they're going to be in the second half of the year. I think the bodies that they did lose in the off-season last year were a lot of talent that came off that list to other lists, and we've seen that with lists moving up and down throughout the ladder this year already. So GWS, I think, probably maybe outperforming a little bit at this stage, but now the injuries are starting to test their depth a little bit. In 11th, I've got one right. Finally, I've got one right. In 11th place at mid-season is St Kilda. They are a team who are up and they are a team who are down. They are a team who don't know if they want to be up or if they want to be down, but they have shown events where they can win games, such as this weekend against Melbourne. They've shown horror shows like they had against West Coast. So I think a fair 11th for St Kilda at this stage. Moving up my ladder in 10th is Western Bulldogs. On season form, they're currently 9th, but again, similar sort of points, similar sort of position to where I thought they'd be. I haven't got it exactly right, but very close to it. So I'll take that one as a small win there. In 9th on my ladder was Fremantle. I thought they were a team who at the end of the year would just miss out on the 8. Maybe this year they've shown they can tough it out in games, get over the line in games, away from home as well already, as we saw against the Gold Coast. Maybe they do sneak into the 8. We'll see in the second half, but I think 8th, 9th, not much difference in comparison there, in or out, so they are in at the moment. We'll see how they go in the second half of the year. 8th in my ladder was Geelong. Geelong currently in 5th, doing business as business does. They are on equal points with 3rd and 4th, and just behind on percentage, missing out on a top 4 spot at the moment. Big improvement. I thought the young Cats may not have had such a big impact this year, but they have, and they hold the Cats in 5th place. Moving up my ladder in 7th is Adelaide. Adelaide are in 3rd place at the moment after their big win against Sydney, and I thought, maybe they show a little bit more promise, but this has been firing out more than I'd ever thought they'd show. They are a team who look destined to be in that Final 4 come end of the year, probably even get to a prelim, and see how they go from there. Definitely, if the draw goes their way, could see them in a grand final again under coach Matty Nix. Now, I've got a couple of blunders on here as we move up. 6th on my ladder was Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide miles and miles away. I have to go all the way back down to 15th to find them. And I thought they may have been able to hold on and just push for one more year, considering that it is Coach Ken's last year. But injuries and other issues with that club, tax-wise, have shown that they have broken and they are not a contender or a force to be reckoned with anymore. Unlike, I thought they'd hold on a little bit longer and just push through one more year for Ken Hinkley and Travis Boak, but unfortunately not the case for the Power. In 5th on my ladder, I have Hawthorn. So Hawthorn in the AFL ladder are in 6th. So I'm not going to contemplate too much on that. I think I was pretty much around the mark there, and I'll take that as a small win for me. Haven't got it exactly right, but I'll still take it. Probably around the same amount of wins as I thought they'd have at this stage. Going into my top 4 now. Top 4, and my premier for the year was going to be Carlton in 4th place. So we go down again. Big blunder here. Big miss so far this year. Carlton, only 4 wins on the board. So there is a 4 there for Carlton. It's not top 4, but it's 4 wins on the board for the Blues. Currently in 13th, I think. So those little misadventures in the first half of their first month of games have set them back, and they haven't really been able to recover. We know Carlton, though, are a team who will put in a strong performance in the second half of the year, but I still don't see them jumping up into that top 8 at this point. 3rd on my ladder was Collingwood. Collingwood are currently the leading team on the AFL ladder and are looking to be minor premiers this year. So they are in 1st. They are in that mix. Again, there's some teams I've got up there as well who are in that mix. Collingwood are definitely up there. They, I think, deserve to be right in the mix along with Adelaide, Brisbane, who I'll talk about in a minute, Gold Coast, Geelong, in that finals, grand finals and grand final contention. So even though they are higher than what I thought they would be at this point, they are quite close around their mark, so of where I thought they'd end up. 2nd, I got another one correct. At mid-season, it's the Brisbane Lions. I thought Brisbane, coming off their premiership last year, were going to be in the mix again this year, and they are. Only behind Collingwood by a draw and percentage. So 2nd for the Lions, very good. They're right in the mix for that position, 1st place position, come the second half of the year. Now, another blunder in 1st place for me was I had the Sydney Swans on my ladder at this stage for pre-season. They are all the way down in the mix of the 4-win teams. So the Sydney Swans way, way away from where they are. And I don't think there's anything to do with Dean Cox in terms of him taking over, because he's been at the club a long time. I know they've had injury issues at Sydney where they get some back and lose some more, but they're a club who I think the depth is there for them, and they've recruited really well. Even I think the young guys, even against Adelaide, just had a bad game on the weekend. I don't think Sydney's as bad as they show so far this year, but they're definitely not coming first this year. So out of all those teams, I've got a couple of close ones, 2 spot on, and I will see how I go for the second half of the season. Ben, that is all I have for you. Week 12 done. My ladder predictor mid-season wrap done. Ben, back to you.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much once again, Aidan. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and reviews and predictions and your mid-season AFL Premiership ladder. Hopefully it's all correct and it's so excited. Can't wait to share this to everyone out there. So thank you to supporting my channel. We do have a 2,500 goal to share, all due to June. So we also have it up to Stanley up to, so we're on 2,256 overall with the 244 downloads. So that's the 2,500's the goal. So we're on also 145 episodes overall. So it's just building all these amazing episodes. It's been a long journey, but stay tuned for that special 150 episode. I know that's no achievement, but it's achievement for me to make that miracle. But 250 is the main overall goal for the episode achievement. All right, thank you so much. See you all soon. Stay tuned for more of those other episodes like the bowling update weekly to the end of the school term and during future. We also have the Aussie Footy Show doubleheader, and including this one, and as well the sample with Aidan and your host BJ. All right, thanks for listening. See you soon. Bye for now. BJ Show is out.